I realized that whereas a few thousand people knew the horror, a few million people knew the horror of the Israeli occupation since 1948, the massacres, the biological warfare, all the crimes that Israel introduced to the Middle East. Now, millions understand, on numbers that you wouldn't dream of before, understand how barbaric Israel is.
The Israeli occupation genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank has not stopped even for 1 hour since 9 months, despite calls by different international organizations, by different international bodies. But Israel is stubborn and determined to continue killing as many Palestinians as it can. To talk about the international solidarity and about the appeals by the different organizations to stop this genocide against Gaza children, I have with me activist Mick Napier from the UK. It's a great pleasure having you on our program, Mr. Napier.
Osama, it's an honor for me. I know the Israelis are killing many journalists, but journalism is alive in Palestine.
Yeah,
journalism is dead in Britain.
Yes, and that's why we see the change in the public opinion in Europe and the West in general, as tens of thousands of people demonstrating every day in the streets, calling on their parliaments and governments to pressure the Israeli occupation government to end its genocide against the Palestinians. If you tell us about the momentum of these demonstrations and the protests in the UK.
They continue in the 8th month of the genocide. The public opinion is only moving in one direction, against Israel, and always against Israel. Because unlike crimes in the past, the devastation of Iraq, of Afghanistan, people now can see what's happening for themselves on social media. And even though the mainstream media are nothing but propaganda organs for the government and for our oligarchs, yes, nonetheless, Israel is losing the battle for public opinion for two reasons. One, I mentioned that we have access to the truth, but secondly, also the Palestinians continue to resist in every possible way. And that is what is inspiring people around the world.
Yes, Mick, now, yes, but you know that Israel started a genocide campaign in this way about 9 months ago, and we saw a lot of protests, a lot of demonstrations in Europe, in the United States, everywhere, but all these calls and appeals went unheeded. Do you think that because of this, these demonstrations are going to lose their momentum and people become, less caring about the Palestinians' situation?
Not less caring, Osama.
Yeah.
The problem is not that they care less, it's that there's a crisis because of 8 months of genocide, and the tenacity of governments and oppositions also, mainly, in support of that genocide, and people have reached a level where we need to find a new way forward. I say today there's trials in Glasgow Sheriff Court and many courts in the country, and also attempts to shut down arms companies which have been attacked by the police. So we have to move now to, especially after the election in Britain, will give us a Prime Minister like Starmer, who is as bad as any genocide supporter. We now have to realise, thanks to the Palestinians who have shone a very bright light on our political system, millions now realise that we don't live in a democracy. We live in a carefully controlled system, and we have to go outside that, and we have to shut down the arms companies and the banks which finance the companies, and we will continue to escalate.
Yes, but Mick, the people who act this way and who show their support for the Palestinians' rights and for justice in Palestine are abused and harassed by their governments. And we saw in many cases, mainly in Germany, the police attacking the protesters and the demonstrators. You yourself, you were prosecuted by the court in the UK, and many of your comrades facing the same situation. How this affects your spirits and your morale?
It only shows, let me say, Mahatma Gandhi said there are 4 stages. The first stage, they ignore you. The second stage, they ridicule. The third stage, they fight. The fourth stage, you win. We are now being attacked. The fact that the US Senate and House of Representatives are supporting a law to jail people like me and others for 10 years and to fine them $1 million if you campaign for PDS. Yeah. This tells you they're worried. And they're worried across America and across the world as well. They're worried that Israel is now so barbaric, is seen as barbarians. They are the new Mongols of the Middle East. This is now burning deeply into public opinion. But we still have to find a way, as we did with Vietnam, to force these governments to abandon Israel. That remains a tough fight, but we know we have public opinion behind us and a very discredited political system now.
Yeah, but Mr. Mick, now when we see the American government, the American Congress, and other parliaments maybe in Europe are drafting such bills and laws in support of the Zionist regime and the Israeli occupation project, don't you think that this gives Israel the courage and the incentive to commit more genocidal acts against the Palestinians and to strengthen its colonial project in the occupied Palestinian territory?
There's no doubt that if I buy a vicious attack dog and I allow this attack dog to attack all my neighbors for many years, it becomes more difficult to control that dog. But it remains a dog, and I remain in charge, even though it's a difficult animal. If America wanted to stop Israel, it could do so very quickly. Now, we face a serious crisis. Yes. But the fact that they're attacking us tells us that they're worried. And you don't know just before they collapse. The ICJ has ruled, the ICC has, I see Spain has now moved in support of South Africa against this, and many other countries have moved behind Israel. The British government is still the worst and is trying to stop the ICJ and the ICC. But I know it's a terrible price in Palestine, a terrible price for the people of Gaza and for journalists being killed. But I think Israel faces certain defeat. We just don't know when, Osama.
Yes, and Mick, now when we see the American administration, it is the first power on a planet. When we see Britain, Germany, some other European countries, here even in the Orient, all supporting the Israeli occupation government, do you think that the Palestinian people who have no arms, no resources, even no land, as the land is being, occupied for settlement building, can they resist all these powers and achieve the victory that they are dreaming of?
Yes.
How?
They cannot do this alone. But Israel is going to help by attacking Lebanon, by attacking other Arab countries. This will become a regional massive crisis. And I think Israel will overreach itself. You notice that the Israeli general resigned from Netanyahu's war cabinet because he knows if they attack Lebanon, they will be defeated. and this looked possible. Napoleon, Hitler, many in the past have been very powerful, but they have overreached themselves. And I think Israel can only commit one crime for the Washington government, and that is to be defeated. They are not defeating the resistance in Gaza. They will never defeat the resistance in Lebanon or Yemen or other Arab countries. I think it will be terribly painful, and I say this from the comfort of my peaceful home, for Israel will be defeated after doing great damage to the whole Middle East.
Yes, and Mick, as you care much about Palestine and the Palestinian cause, you're very interested in the Palestinian situation. When you watch from your position in the UK, how Israel is decimating the people of Gaza, the Israeli settlements are increasing so rapidly in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem. Don't you get the feeling that Israel is realizing now its policy and its scheme of having its colonial project completed in the region?
That is certainly the view of Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich.
Yes.
They wish to drive every Palestinian from Palestine. That's the goal. But you know, I read a speech by Naftali Bennett recently. Naftali Bennett is the man who said, I killed many Arabs and I have no problem with that. But last week he was saying, please, Israelis, don't leave Israel. He's very worried that so many Israelis are leaving, and the Times of Israel calculated that since October, 500,000 Israeli Jews have left Israel not to return. Now, I think Bennett is worried. Bennett says internationally they have a serious crisis. Their reputation is just is terrible, horrible. And they also have a problem with their economy. And he said the war is not going well. They have killed tens of thousands of children and adults, but their war aims they haven't realized.
Yeah,
and they will not realize them.
Yes.
In fact, most Israelis now believe, 62% of Israelis believe that they cannot defeat Hamas.
Yeah. Before my final question, I would like to ask you what impact the elections in the UK could have on the UK's policy vis-a-vis Israel-Palestine.
I'm sorry to say very little. This is a very carefully managed political system, and the Labour Party crushed Jeremy Corbyn, who was pro-Palestine, against NATO, for justice and peace for all. And the new man at the head of the Labour Party is a monstrous figure. But I think the day after the election, there will be struggle against this government, and people will realize that he means Palestinians harm, he means us harm as well.
Yes, and my final question to you, Mick, as a brother and a friend of the Palestinian people, when you see the Israeli occupation forces unleashing their police dogs against old Palestinian women in Gaza, when you see the Israeli occupation forces carrying injured Palestinian youth on the military vehicle hood as a human shield, how do you feel?
In one very, very limited sense, I realized that whereas a few thousand people knew the horror, a few million people knew the horror of the Israeli occupation since 1948, the massacres, the biological warfare, all the crimes that Israel introduced to the Middle East. Now, millions understand, numbers that you wouldn't dream of before, understand how barbaric Israel is, and they will pay a price. The Zionists, when they talk among themselves, they realize that they are in deep, deep trouble. They cannot defeat Gaza, they cannot defeat Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Yemen, It's impossible. So I think they have bitten off more than they can chew. And the incredible resistance of Palestinian people in every way, is inspiring people around the world. And Israel, you know, if my neighbors think that somebody is a thief and an abuser, you never recover from that reputation. Israel can never recover from the pit of horror people now see. It will never recover. And that has implications for international solidarity going forward. It's small consolation to you and your brave colleagues in Palestine, Sam, but more and more people are coming into the fight for the Palestinian people, because we understand if these monsters can support genocide in Gaza, they are capable of anything against us.
Mick, UK activist, brother and a friend of the Palestinian people, supporter of human rights and justice for the Palestinians. It is always a great honor having you on our screen. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mick.
Don't say that, Osama. The honor is mine.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from me, Osama Nazal, wish you a nice time.